Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the research vessel Aurora, watching the stars through the main screen. 3 years had passed since Earth launched its first deep space exploration fleet, and Jake felt proud to lead one of the finest crews in human history. The Aurora was not a warship, but a vessel built for discovery and peace. Lisa Park worked at her medical station checking supply levels, while Danny Carter ran diagnostics on the ship engines. Kate Sullivan sat at communications monitoring space traffic in the region. They had been traveling through this sector for 2 weeks without finding anything unusual until today. Kate looked up from her console with excitement in her eyes. She had detected something that made her heart race with anticipation. A damaged alien ship was drifting near a beautiful nebula that painted space in colors of purple and gold. This would be humanity's first real contact with another intelligent species. Jake ordered the Aurora to approach slowly. He wanted to show any aliens that humans came in peace. The alien vessel was unlike anything they had ever seen. It looked like it was made from some kind of crystal that reflected light in amazing ways. Parts of the ship were clearly damaged, with sections torn open, and Dark Lisa scanned the alien ship with her medical equipment and found life signs inside. Someone was alive in there and needed help. Jake made the decision to attempt a rescue mission. He ordered Danny to prepare the shuttle bay, while Kate tried to send peaceful messages to the damaged vessel. Alien ship belonged to something called the Zephyrian Federation. None of the humans had ever heard this name before. Inside the crystal, ship was a young scientist named Lyra, who had blue skin that looked like living crystal. She could read thoughts and speak to others with her mind. Her people were known across the galaxy for being peaceful and for their amazing healing abilities. Lyra's ship had been attacked by the Vrak Consortium. The Vrak were a military empire that controlled many star systems through fear and violence. They had learned about humans by intercepting old broadcasts from Earth that showed human wars and conflicts. Based on these violent images, the Vrak believed all humans were savage warriors who loved to fight and kill. When Lyra saw the human ship approaching, she felt scared. Her people had been warned that humans were dangerous creatures who solved every problem with violence. She had been taught that humans were no better than the Vrak, and maybe even worse. The Zephyrian leaders told their people to avoid humans at all costs. Jake tried to communicate with Lyra using simple mathematical signals and pictures. He wanted to show her that humans wanted to help, not hurt. Lisa prepared medical supplies, while Danny got the rescue shuttle ready. Kate kept sending peaceful messages, hoping the alien would understand. Just as the Aurora moved close enough to begin rescue operations, 3 Vrak warships appeared from behind the nebula like sharks smelling blood. The Vrak ships were dark and covered with weapons. They looked like they were built only for war and destruction. The Vrak commander immediately opened fire on the Aurora. He believed the humans were trying to capture Lyra to use her as a slave, or to steal Zephyrian technology. The Vrak had no interest in talking or learning the truth. They shot first and planned to ask questions later, ordered his crew to raise shields and return fire. The Aurora was not built for combat, but it had basic defensive weapons. The human ship shook under the powerful Vrak attacks. Lights flickered and alarms rang throughout the corridors. During the chaos of battle, Lyra's escape pod was damaged by stray weapons fire. The small crystal pod began falling toward the nearby planet atmosphere. If it crashed, Lyra would die, and any chance for peace between humans and Zephyrians would be lost forever. Jake watched the escape pod falling and made a decision that surprised his entire crew. He left the bridge and ran to the shuttle bay. Danny tried to stop him, saying it was too dangerous, but Jake would not listen. He climbed into a rescue shuttle and launched toward the falling pod. Lisa shouted over the communication system that the rescue mission was suicide. The planet below had a dangerous atmosphere, and the Vrak ships were still shooting. Jake would have to fly through enemy fire and then navigate a deadly atmospheric entry. The chances of survival were almost zero. Jake ignored the warnings and pushed his shuttle to maximum speed. He had never met Lyra, but he could not watch an innocent person die when he had the power to help. This was not about politics or species differences. This was about saving a life. The wrack ships tried to shoot down Jake's shuttle, but he flew with skill that amazed even his own crew. He dodged missiles and laser blasts while chasing the falling escape pod. The planet grew larger in his view screen. As both craft entered the dangerous atmosphere, Lyra watched from her damaged pod as the human ship followed her down. She could not understand why a human would risk his life to save her. Everything she had been taught said that humans only cared about themselves and would never help an alien. Yet here was proof that maybe her people had been wrong. The Aurora was forced to retreat as more wrack ships arrived. Captain Susan Blake made the difficult choice to leave Jake behind. She promised herself that they would return with reinforcements. To rescue both Jake and the alien Jake's shuttle was damaged by atmospheric entry and began to lose power. He could see Lyra pod spinning out of control below him. With his last bit of engine power, he managed to catch the alien pod with his shuttle. Rescue claws. Both craft were now falling together toward the planet's surface. The planet below was covered in red sand and strange rock formations. Toxic storms moved across the landscape like angry spirits. Deadly creatures lived in the shadows waiting for prey. This was not a place where anyone would want to crash land. Jake used every bit of his piloting skill to find a safe landing spot. He aimed for a valley between two large mountains, hoping the rocks would provide shelter from the storms. The shuttle hit the ground hard and slid across the sand before finally stopping against a boulder. When everything became quiet, Jake climbed out of his damaged shuttle and ran to check on Lyra. The alien girl was unconscious, but alive. Her blue crystal skin was beautiful, even though she was hurt. Jake carefully carried her to his shelter and used his medical supplies to treat her wounds. Lyra slowly opened her eyes and saw Jake caring for her injuries. She had expected to be killed or tortured by the bloodthirsty human. Instead, she found herself being gently treated by someone who risked everything to save her life. This was her first hint that everything she had been taught about humans might be completely wrong. Jake looked around at the damaged shuttle and realized they were in serious trouble. The communication system was broken, and the Aurora was gone. He and Lyra were stranded on a hostile planet with limited supplies and no way to call for help. The red sand outside was already being whipped around by winds that carried poison in the air. Lyra woke up slowly and immediately moved away from Jake in fear. Her crystal blue skin seemed to glow with worry as she pressed herself against the far wall of the shuttle. She had been taught that humans were violent monsters who could not be trusted. Even though Jake had saved her life, she still expected him to hurt her. Jake noticed her fear and tried to make himself seem less threatening. He sat down on the floor and spoke in a calm voice, even though he knew she could not understand his words. He held up his hands to show he had no weapons and moved very slowly so she would not be startled. The alien girl watched Jake with large eyes that changed color like deep water. Her people could read thoughts, but Jake's mind was different from anything she had encountered before. Human thoughts were complex and layered in ways that confused her telepathic abilities. Jake opened his emergency food supplies and offered half to Lyra. She looked at the strange human food with suspicion. In her world, sharing food was a sign of trust and friendship. She could not understand why a human would share his limited supplies with an alien enemy. When Lyra hesitated to take the food, Jake ate some first to show it was safe. Then he placed her portion on the ground between them and backed away. He pointed to himself and said his name slowly. Then he pointed to her and waited to see if she would respond. Lyra was surprised by Jake's gentle behavior. The Vrak had told her people that humans were selfish creatures who only cared about themselves. Yet this human was sharing his food and trying to communicate peacefully. She whispered her name in her musical alien language. Jake smiled when he heard her name and repeated it as best he could. His pronunciation was terrible, but Lyra could see he was trying to be respectful. She had never seen a human smile before, and was amazed by how it changed his whole face from scary to kind over. The next few hours, Jake worked on repairing their communication equipment while Lyra watched him carefully. She noticed that he was very gentle with the delicate alien technology from her pod. A violent savage would have just broken everything, but Jake treated her equipment with the same care he showed to his own. The first toxic storm hit the planet. Jake quickly sealed all the openings in their shelter. The wind outside howled like a living thing, and the air turned yellow with poison. Lyra began to cough as the alien atmosphere affected her lungs. Her crystal skin started to lose its bright color and become dull. Jake immediately gave Lyra his breathing mask, even though he needed it too. He watched her condition carefully, and when she got worse, he made a decision that shocked her completely. He put on his environmental suit and went outside into the deadly storm to look for help. The planet's surface was covered with strange plants that could survive the toxic air. Jake had studied the emergency database and knew that some of these plants might have healing properties. He fought against the burning wind and searched through the alien vegetation, looking for anything that might help. Lyra, a pack of predatory creatures, attacked Jake while he was collecting plants. These animals looked like a cross between wolves and lizards with teeth like knives. They had been waiting in the rocks for something weak to hunt. Jake was forced to fight them with only a small plasma cutter as a weapon. Jake did not want to kill the creatures, but he had no choice when they tried to tear him apart. He used his tool to drive them away while protecting the medicinal plants he had gathered. Even while fighting for his life, he was thinking about saving Lyra when Jake returned to the shelter. He was injured and exhausted, but he immediately began preparing the plants into medicine for Lyra. She watched in amazement as this human who barely knew her worked through the night to save her life. Her people had been completely wrong about humans. The medicine worked, and Lyra began to feel better. Her skin regained its crystal glow, and her breathing became easier. She looked at Jake with new eyes and realized that everything she had been taught was a lie. This human was not a monster, but a hero. Jake collapsed from exhaustion after making sure Lyra was safe. She used her healing abilities to treat his wounds from the creature attack. As she touched his skin, she could feel his thoughts more clearly. She saw memories of his daughter Emma back on Earth and understood that Jake was a father who joined the space program to help make the galaxy safer for his child. Lyra realized that Jake's apparent violence against the predators was not cruelty, but protection. He had fought the creatures not because he enjoyed killing, but because he needed to defend someone who could not defend herself. This was completely different from the mindless aggression the Vrak had described. As days passed, Jake and Lyra learned to communicate using hand signals and simple drawings. Jake showed her pictures of Earth and his family, while Lyra shared images of her crystal cities and peaceful people. They began to understand each other's cultures and values. Jake built traps and defenses around their shelter to keep the dangerous animals away. Lyra was amazed by his skill and creativity. He could turn ordinary materials into tools and weapons that kept them both safe. She began to see that human intelligence was not just about fighting, but about solving problems when food ran low. Jake ventured out again to hunt for supplies. He refused to let Lyra come with him because the planet was too dangerous for her. She watched him leave and worried that he might not return. For the first time, she realized she actually cared about what happened to a human. Jake returned with enough food and water to last several more days. He had also found materials to improve their shelter and make it more comfortable. Lyra helped him with the work and discovered that humans and Zephyrians could accomplish more together than either could alone. During quiet moments, Lyra used her telepathic abilities to help Jake understand her language while he taught her basic human words. They shared stories about their worlds and dreams for the future. Jake talked about wanting to explore the galaxy peacefully, while Lyra dreamed of healing the wounds between different species. Evening, as they watched the alien sunset paint the sky in strange colors, Lyra finally spoke to Jake in broken human language. She thanked him for saving her life and told him that he was not the monster her people had described. Jake smiled and said that her people were not the weak fools that some humans believed them to be. Their growing friendship was interrupted when they detected ships entering the planet atmosphere. Jake hoped it might be a rescue mission from the Yaski. Aurora, but Lyra's face filled with terror. She recognized the energy signatures of wrack hunting ships. The enemy had found them and was coming to finish what they started. Jake checked his weapons and began preparing defensive positions around their shelter. Lyra was amazed to see him shift from gentle protector to determined warrior in seconds. She finally understood that human strength came not from loving violence, but from being willing to fight, when fighting was the only way to protect innocent people. The wrack ships landed in the distance and began sending out search parties. Jake knew they were outnumbered and outgunned, but he also knew he would never let them take Lyra. He had made a promise to protect her, and he intended to keep that promise no matter what it cost him. The wrack hunting party consisted of 6 reptilian warriors, led by Commander Scarth, who believed that mercy was weakness and strength could only be proven through violence. These creatures stood over 7 feet tall, with scales like armor and claws that could tear through metal. They had tracked Jake and Lyra across half the galaxy and would not leave without completing their mission. Scarth ordered his warriors to capture the Zephyrian alive for interrogation about her people defenses, and to kill the human quickly. The wrack commander had studied human military tactics and expected Jake to make a direct assault like the savage warrior he believed all humans to be. Scarth was prepared for a violent frontal attack, but not for what actually happened. Jake knew he could not win a direct fight against 6 trained wrack soldiers with superior weapons and armor. Instead, he used his knowledge of the hostile planet environment to level the battlefield. He had spent days exploring the area and learning about the dangerous creatures and natural hazards that made this world so deadly. The first trap Jake set used the planet toxic geysers that erupted from underground at regular intervals. He left false tracks leading to a valley where superheated poison gas shot into the air every few minutes. 2 wrack warriors followed the trail and were caught in the deadly eruption. Their armor protected them from immediate death, but they were badly injured and could not continue the hunt. Jake's next trap involved the pack of predatory creatures he had fought earlier. He used scent markers to lead the remaining wrack soldiers into the territory where these animals hunted. The creatures attacked the heavily armed warriors, thinking they were invading their hunting grounds. In the chaos that followed, Jake was able to capture weapons and equipment from the distracted soldiers. Lyra watched from their hidden shelter as Jake moved through the landscape like a ghost. She could barely see him, even with her enhanced alien senses. The humans seemed to become part of the environment itself, using every rock, tree, and shadow to stay invisible. This was not the mindless violence her people had been warned about, but intelligent warfare at its finest. Commander Scarth began to realize he was facing an opponent unlike any human he had studied. Jake was not charging into battle with weapons blazing, but instead was picking apart the wrack force piece by piece. The reptilian commander felt something he had not experienced in years of military service. He felt hunted. Jake's third trap was the most dangerous for him personally. He allowed himself to be spotted by the remaining wreck soldiers and led them on a chase. through a canyon filled with unstable rock formations. At exactly the right moment, he triggered a controlled avalanche that buried 2 more warriors under tons of stone and debris now. Only Commander Scarf and 1 other warrior remained, but they had finally cornered Jake in a dead-end canyon with nowhere to run. The Vrak commander raised his plasma rifle with satisfaction, believing the hunt was finally over. He had underestimated human cunning, but superior. Firepower would still win the day, surprised Scarth by dropping his weapons and raising his hands in apparent surrender. The Vrak commander hesitated, confused by this unexpected behavior. In that moment of uncertainty, Jake triggered his final trap. Hidden charges he had placed in the canyon walls brought down a shower of rocks that separated the 2 remaining. Vrak soldiers with the enemy divided. Jake was able to fight them one at a time instead of facing both together. His combat skills were impressive, but what shocked Lyra most was his restraint. Even when he had clear opportunities to kill his defeated opponents, Jake chose instead to disable them and take them prisoner. The last Vrak warrior was badly injured and abandoned by his commander, who fled back to the ships rather than risk his own life helping a wounded subordinate. Jake found the alien soldier bleeding among the rocks, and despite Lyra warnings that it might be a trap, he immediately began providing medical aid. Lyra could not believe what she was seeing. This human warrior, who had just defeated an entire Vrak hunting party, was now gently treating the wounds of his enemy. She used her telepathic abilities to scan the injured Vrak soldier and confirmed that Jake was in no danger. The warrior was too badly hurt to be a threat. Jake worked carefully to stop the alien bleeding and made the creature as comfortable as possible. He even shared some of his precious water with the enemy soldier. When Lyra asked through their growing, shared language why he was helping someone who had tried to kill him, Jake simply said that the fighting was over, and now it was time to heal. The injured Vrak warrior looked up at Jake with confusion in his reptilian eyes. His people had taught him that humans were monsters who showed no mercy to defeated enemies. Yet here was a human treating him with more kindness than his own commander had shown when leaving him behind to die. Commander Scarth returned to his ships and reported to his superiors that the human was far more dangerous than they had believed. He recommended sending a full battle fleet to deal with Jake and suggested that all previous intelligence about human combat capabilities was seriously flawed. The Vrak High Command began to realize they might have underestimated their new enemy back. In the canyon, Jake and Lyra worked together to care for their prisoner. She used her healing abilities while he provided medical supplies and comfort. The Vrak soldier began to understand that these 2 beings were nothing like what he had been taught to expect from humans, and Zephyrians thrive for telepathic connection. With the injured warrior, Lyra learned disturbing information about Vrak military plans. The Reptilian Empire was not just hunting her and Jake, but was preparing for massive invasions of both Earth and the Zephyrian homeworld. The Vrak intended to destroy both species before they could form an alliance. Jake realized that their personal survival was no longer the most important issue. If the Vrak succeeded in their invasion plans, billions of innocent people would die. He and Lyra had to find a way to warn their respective governments about the coming attack, even if it meant risking their own lives. Injured Vrak soldier revealed through Lyra telepathic questioning that there was an ancient Zephyrian communication relay hidden deep in the planet core region. This facility was built long ago by Lyra ancestors and could send messages across the galaxy instantly. If they could reach it, they might be able to warn both their peoples about the Vrak deception. Jake studied the information about the relay location and realized the journey would be incredibly dangerous. They would have to travel through underground tunnels filled with deadly creatures and navigate energy fields that could kill them instantly. The chances of survival were small, but the alternative was allowing genocide on a galactic scale. Lyra agreed that they had to attempt the mission, despite the risks. She had seen Jake's courage and determination during the battle with the Vrek hunters, and knew that if anyone could succeed in this impossible task, it would be him. She also knew that her healing abilities and telepathic powers would be essential. For their survival, before leaving Jake made sure the injured Vrak warrior had enough supplies to survive until rescue arrived. The alien soldier could not understand why his enemy was showing such concern for his welfare. This act of compassion toward someone who had tried to kill him proved to Lyra that Jake represented the very best of what humanity could be. As they prepared to leave for the dangerous journey to the communication relay, Lyra reflected on how completely her understanding of humans had changed. She had arrived on this planet believing Jake was a bloodthirsty savage who would probably kill her. Our sport. Instead, she had discovered that his apparent capacity for violence was actually a different face of his greatest strength, which was his absolute commitment to protecting those who could not protect themselves. Jake checked their supplies one final time and looked at the treacherous path ahead. He thought about his daughter Emma back on Earth, and all the children of both species who would die if the Vrak invasion succeeded. That gave him the courage he needed to face whatever dangers waited in the planet depths. The hunter had truly become the protector, and now he would prove that human strength came not from loving war, but from being willing to fight, when fighting was the only way to save innocent lives. Jake and Lyra began their descent into the planet underground tunnel system that would lead them to the ancient Zephyrian communication relay. The wounded Vrak soldier had provided detailed information about the route through Lyra telepathic connection, but he had also warned them about the terrible dangers that waited in the depths. Tunnels were carved from black stone that seemed to absorb light, making their journey feel like walking through the heart of darkness itself. Strange. Symbols covered the walls left behind by Lyra ancestors who had built this facility thousands of years ago. The air grew thicker and harder to breathe as they moved deeper underground. Lyra used her telepathic abilities to stay connected with the injured Vrak warrior above, and through him she learned more disturbing details about the coming invasion. A massive Vrak battle fleet was already moving toward Earth, while another equally large force approached the Zephyrian homeworld. The attacks were planned to happen at exactly the same time to prevent either species from helping the other. The information revealed that the Vrak had been manipulating both humans and Zephyrians for years by intercepting communications and spreading false propaganda. They had made each species believe the other was dangerous and untrustworthy. This prevented the natural alliance that would have made both peoples strong enough to resist Vrak conquest. Jake realized the brilliant evil of the Vrak strategy. By keeping humans and Zephyrians apart through lies and fear, the Reptilian Empire had ensured that two powerful species would never combine their strengths. Human courage and tactical skill paired with Zephyrian technology and wisdom would have been unstoppable. They moved deeper into the tunnels. The temperature began to rise and the walls started glowing with strange energy. Lyra explained that they were approaching the planet core where massive power sources fed the ancient communication relay. The energy levels here were dangerous for both their species, but especially deadly for humans. The first major obstacle they encountered was a chamber filled with creatures that looked like living electricity. These beings were made of pure energy and could kill with a single touch. Jake studied their movement patterns and realized they followed predictable paths like guards patrolling a fortress. Using his military training, Jake timed their movements and found a route through the chamber that would avoid the energy creatures. He and Lyra moved carefully from shadow to shadow, staying just out of reach of the deadly beings. One mistake would mean instant death, but Jake, steady nerves and precise timing got them through safely. Next challenge was a series of unstable energy fields that shifted and changed without warning. These barriers could slice through solid metal like paper, and there was no way to predict when they would move. Lyra tried to use her telepathic abilities to sense the pattern, but the chaotic energy interfered with her mental powers. Jake noticed that the energy fields were connected to the planet's natural rotation and magnetic fluctuations. By calculating the timing based on seismic readings, he was able to predict when safe passages would open. His scientific knowledge and intuitive understanding of natural systems saved them from being cut to pieces deep in the tunnel system. They encountered a massive creature that had been guarding the communication relay for centuries. This ancient beast was as large as a building with claws that could tear through solid rock. It had been placed here by Lyra ancestors to protect their technology from intruders. The guardian creature attacked immediately, seeing Jake as a threat to the sacred relay. Jake tried to avoid fighting the beast, knowing that it was just doing its job of protection, but the creature gave him no choice. He was forced to use his plasma cutter and improvised explosives to drive the massive guardian away from the tunnel entrance. During the battle with the guardian creature, Jake was severely injured when falling rocks crushed his left arm and leg. He was bleeding badly and could barely walk, but he insisted they continue the mission. Billions of lives depended on them reaching the communication relay, and he would not let his injuries stop them. Lyra used her healing abilities to treat Jake's wounds, but her powers were limited, and she could not completely repair the damage. She could keep him alive and reduce his pain, but he would need proper medical treatment to fully recover. Jake told her not to waste energy on him that she might need for the mission, despite his serious injuries. Jake continued to guide them through the most dangerous parts of the underground journey. His experience and intuition were essential for navigating hazards that would have killed Lyra without his protection. She marveled at his determination to continue fighting even when his body was failing. Jake's thoughts during this painful journey were not about his own survival, but about all the innocent people who would die if they failed. He thought about his daughter Emma playing in the parks of Earth, and about Zephyrian children learning to use their telepathic gifts. Devrak would show no mercy to the young or innocent. Lyra was amazed by Jake's willingness to sacrifice himself for people he had never met, including members of her own species that many humans still considered enemies. This selfless heroism was completely opposite to everything she had been taught about human nature. Jake proved that humanity's greatest strength was not their capacity for violence, but their capacity for love. Finally reached the ancient communication relay after hours of dangerous travel through the planet depths. The facility was a marvel of Zephyrian technology, with crystal computers that had been running automatically for thousands of years. The relay had enough power to send messages to every corner of the galaxy. Jake collapsed from exhaustion and blood loss as soon as they reached safety. Lyra immediately began working on the communication equipment while using her healing powers to keep him alive. She had to divide her attention between the complex technical work and preventing Jake from dying. The relay systems were incredibly sophisticated, but Lyra had been trained in ancient Zephyrian technology. She managed to establish connections with both the Aurora and the Zephyrian Fleet Command. For the first time in galactic history, humans and Zephyrians would receive the same message at the same time. Jake helped Lyra compose the warning message. Despite his weakness from injuries, they included tactical information about wreck fleet positions and battle plans, along with proof that the two species had been manipulated into fearing each other. Most importantly, they showed that cooperation between humans and Zephyrians was not only possible, but incredibly powerful. Message also contained personal testimony from both Jake and Lyra about their experiences together. They described how they had overcome prejudice and fear to become true allies. Their story proved that the supposed differences between their species were actually complementary strengths. As they transmitted the warning across the galaxy, Jake began to lose consciousness from his injuries. Lyra held his hand and used her telepathic abilities to share her strength with him. She promised him that their sacrifice would not be in vain. and that their peoples would learn to work together. Communication relays sent their message to Earth and the Zephyrian homeworld simultaneously. For the first time, leaders of both species learned the truth about Vrak manipulation and the coming invasion. More importantly, they saw proof that humans and Zephyrians could trust each other and fight together. Jake smiled weakly as he felt the message being transmitted across space. He knew that Emma and all the children of both species would have a chance to grow up in peace because of what he and Lyra had accomplished together. His willingness to sacrifice everything for others had given the galaxy hope Lyra used to last. Of her healing energy to stabilize Jake's condition, and then activated the relay emergency beacon. Help would come eventually, but she did not know if they would survive long enough to be rescued. All she could do was wait and hope that their message had reached the right people in time to prevent the coming war. The warning message that Jake and Lyra transmitted from the ancient communication relay reached both Earth and the Zephyrian homeworld at exactly the same moment, creating the first true communication between the two species in galactic history. Captain Susan Blake of the Aurora was the first human to receive the transmission, and she immediately understood the massive implications of what she was. Hearing on the Zephyrian homeworld, Admiral Corvex was attending a council meeting when the Astakov message arrived. The crystal beings had been debating whether to trust the humans, who had rescued one of their people, or to treat them as potential enemies. Jake and Lyra's words changed everything by proving that cooperation was not only possible but essential for survival. The message contained detailed tactical information about Vrak fleet positions and battle plans that neither species could have obtained alone. More importantly, it included personal testimony from Jake and Lyra about their friendship and partnership. Their stories shattered years of propaganda and mistrust between humans and Zephyrians. Captain Blake immediately contacted Admiral Corvex using the communication protocols that Jake and Lyra had included in their message. The two military leaders spoke for the first time in either species' history and quickly realized they had much more in common than their peoples had believed. Both were parents who wanted to protect their children from war, and both commanded fleets that valued honor over conquest. Combined human and Zephyrian fleets moved to intercept the approaching Vrak invasion forces. Human tactical skill and warrior determination paired perfectly with Zephyrian advanced technology and healing abilities. The alliance that the Vrak had worked so hard to prevent was finally happening at the worst possible time for their empire. First joint battle between human and Zephyrian forces took place near a strategic system that controlled access to both homeworlds. Captain Blake coordinated the attack strategies, while Admiral Corvex provided advanced shields and healing support for damaged ships. The combination proved devastating to Vrak forces, who had planned for fighting each species separately. Jake and Lyra were rescued from the planet depths by a joint human and Zephyrian team that worked together seamlessly. The rescue squad included Lisa Park from the Aurora and several Zephyrian healers, who immediately began treating Jake's severe injuries. Seeing humans and aliens working together to save lives proved that their sacrifice had meaning. During his recovery, Jake was amazed to learn that his daughter, Emma, had become something of a celebrity on Earth. The story of her father friendship with an alien had captured the imagination of people around the world. Children were learning about Zephyrian culture in schools, and adults were volunteering for the new joint exploration programs. Lyra returned to the Zephyrian Federation as a changed person who spent her time advocating for deeper cooperation with humanity. She used her telepathic abilities to share her memories of Jake's courage and kindness with other Zephyrians who had doubted human intentions. Her personal experience became proof that their species could trust each other. The war against the Vrak Consortium ended in decisive victory for the human and Zephyrian alliance. The Reptilian Empire had been so confident in their divide and conquer strategy that they were completely unprepared for facing united opposition. Their fleets were scattered, and their leadership was forced to negotiate for peace. Jake and Lyra were officially appointed as the first ambassadors between their species. They worked together to establish protocols for future cooperation and to design exchange programs that would let humans and Zephyrians learn about each other's cultures. Their friendship became the foundation for a new age of galactic peace. The first joint colony world was established on a beautiful planet with purple skies and crystal rivers. Human engineers worked alongside Zephyrian architects to build cities that combined the best of both civilizations. The settlement was named New Harmony in honor of the cooperation that made it possible. Jake brought his daughter, Emma, to visit the new colony, and she was amazed by the alien children who played games using telepathic abilities. Emma quickly learned to communicate with young Zephyrians and became one of the first human children to have alien friends. Her father watched with pride as she helped build bridges between species. Lyra established a healing center on New Harmony where human doctors learned Zephyrian medical techniques while alien healers studied human surgical procedures. The combination of both medical traditions created treatments that were more effective than either species could achieve alone. Diseases that had plagued both peoples for centuries were finally being cured. The educational programs on New Harmony became a model for the rest of the galaxy. Human children learned about patience and wisdom from Zephyrian teachers, while alien students discovered courage and determination from human instructors. Both species became stronger by learning from each other. Jake often taught survival and tactical classes to mixed groups of human and Zephyrian students. He showed them how to work together, using each species' natural abilities to overcome challenges that would be impossible for either group alone. His lessons were about more than just survival skills, but about the importance of cooperation and trust. Lyra developed programs that used telepathic communication to help humans and Zephyrians understand each other better. She discovered that while humans could not read minds directly, they had intuitive abilities that were similar to telepathy. By working together, both species could achieve understanding that went beyond simple language. The success of a human and Zephyrian alliance inspired other species throughout the galaxy to reconsider their own prejudices and conflicts. Diplomatic missions were established with dozens of civilizations that